Hi, I'm Rick Friel.
Hey, I'm Chris Friel.
And I'm Carrie Akre, and we are the Rockfords, and this is the State of Love and Trust.
Close my eyes and drift away to the fall.
Welcome to another episode of the State of Love and Trust. It's a Pearl Jam podcast, and one of your two hosts, Jason Kerepesi, and alongside me, as always, is
Paul Ghiglieri.
Yes, I did it again. I pointed to you and looked at you, even though we're not in the same place. It's fun to do.
How often did you practice that before we actually went live? Is it when
I didn't practice at all.
Really? Okay.
As we'll come to learn in this episode, you just got to go with your gut sometimes. You just
got to go
do
with
it
your
the first
gut.
time.
Sometimes things just happen. You know what I mean?
What was that, a sticker?
It was.
Watch out.
They just fly out of nowhere sometimes.
Hello, everybody out there in podcast land. If you're watching, please go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. That helps a lot, actually, more than you would think. The algorithms love a good like and love a good subscribe. So go ahead and do that. And if you're listening only, those algorithms really do appreciate what Paul's going to tell you right now.
Well, they should rate, review, and subscribe in their preferred podcast platform of choice. Feed that algorithm. It's hungry for something more than stickers.
What is it hungry for?
It's hungry for rates, for reviews, and a few subscriptions if you got any left. So
I've learned that repetition is the key to these kinds of things. You see those commercials?
It's not practice makes perfect, Jason. It's practice makes permanent, right?
Ooh,
yeah,
that makes sense.
It does.
You think about like those midday or overnight ads where it's like they repeat like the name of the product or the phone number like 18 times in 30 seconds. You go, what the hell's going on? But you remember it. So like and subscribe.
Persistence. Yeah.
There we go. Anywho, what would be really cool though, beyond just liking and subscribing, is to donate to our February. It's a new month, February fundraiser. This month we are raising funds for DonorsChoose.org. This is something that I think is probably in Paul's heart because it helps teachers and schools and classes and school children get the best possible education they can. It helps to purchase markers and paper and staplers and like these little things. And Paul, we may not have a Department of Education very soon, so this is very important.
Yeah, I don't really know where to go with that. So just
donate.
Just donate. Yeah.
Just scan that QR code that you saw, or tap the link in our Instagram bio. Donate some money. Donors Choose has been around for a while, and it's one of my favorite personally. And as Paul threw earlier, stickers and pins could be yours for $5 or more.
Stickers. You can have one. You can have two. You can have three. You can have four.
And I'll tell you what, I didn't think, but because it's February, I have yield in my mind, Paul. And I said to myself, you know what? We like to have carrots for donations for this nonprofit stuff. This month, the greatest donator will receive the giveaway vinyl, Paul. The giveaway vinyl. Incredible.
It's an incredible giveaway.
If
we're giving away the giveaway.
There you go. We are yielding
infidelity to fidelity, right? What do you say?
But seriously, the giveaway vinyl could be yours if you're the greatest donator to DonorsChoose.org in the month of February. If you want to help this show and support what we do, Patreon is a great place to do that. Really cool Discord community over there, lots of cool extra content. And there are monthly giveaways as well, Paul. We are staying on brand with this episode. The Patreon giveaway will be a Rockfords Record Store Day limited 2 LP vinyl of the actual, the OG record, and the EP on CD. So you're getting all the Rockford studio cuts for being a patron.
I like that.
Don't you? Another way that you could support the show is by visiting our online shop. All kinds of cool merch in there. You got shirts and you got hoodies, maybe some
mugs.
hats.
Yeah.
Possibly what Paul is currently holding, one of our mugs. Look at that. This the Home Away from Home logo. I've got one too. It's our mirror ball type logo. I'm turning it correctly. There you go.
There you go.
So
it's a good one.
We got
a great way to
watch
showcase the wonderful artists, by the way, who put these together. Because I tell you what, I didn't make this.
No, you did not. You didn't make anything.
No.
But great content. So we thank you in advance for purchasing anything to help support this show, keep the wheels moving, and so we can do way more cool stuff. Speaking of very cool stuff, this week's episode is awesome. And it's about a band that isn't Pearl Jam, but Pearl Jam adjacent. And the record slaps. I mentioned it a moment ago. It's the Rockfords. It's turning 25 like 2 days ago or something like that. And we've got the band to talk about it. So right after the break, the Rockfords. The term the Seattle scene can be derided as obtuse and a blatant statement considering the various kinds of music that have come out of Seattle over the years. But there certainly was a scene when it came to how rock bands supported and often played with each other back in the 80s and the 90s. And one of those bands is the Rockfords, formed by friends and family, a veritable stew of bands like Hammerbox, Shadow, and later Pearl Jam. Now, their only full-length record came out almost 25 years ago to the day. And to celebrate it with us, our bassist Rick Friel, brother and drummer Chris Friel, and singer Carrie Akre. Welcome to the show, gang.
Hello.
Right on. Thank you for having us.
Mm-hmm.
Nice
It is
to
a
be
pleasure.
here. Hello from Kirkland.
You know, you say Kirkland, and that's a real town, but like I always think of Costco now when I hear that.
It's right down the street.
Rick's actually in a Costco right now. He's in one.
I know. I'm actually they
looking for
support
Butterfingers.
DEI. They support DEI, so I'm going to go buy some chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can I tell you real quick? I went to go buy some eggs for my wife because she's making banana bread.
$11.99 a dozen, I'm guessing.
$11.99, and I go,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Called it.
Yeah.
And Costco, you can get 24 of like the proper pasture raised, like not like gross eggs for $8. So I'm
Chris
all about the
Friel-
Costco.
Chris Friel really cares about eggs, so go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, Trader Joe's. And actually, spoiler alert, this is what I'm buying my wife for Valentine's Day. It's a carton of eggs.
The Rockfords' next album will be entitled Village Market.
Mm-hmm.
Trader Joe's has the best prices. Take it from me.
We're off to a roaring start here, Paul.
We're already in the
We've-
ditch.
Super
we've
rock
gotten
and
nowhere.
roll. Super rock and roll.
Edit this out.
Now,
Boy.
we gotta talk about you guys as a group of humans before we really dive into the music, because without these relationships that you guys all have, none of this music is happening. So I want to start with a quote. Somewhere between braces and spandex. Rick,
Absolutely.
that's how
Yeah.
you describe Shadow, right? So you got this hard rock band, as many of our viewers and listeners will know, with Chris and Danny Newcomb and Mike McCready. You guys formed it in the mid-'80s, early 80s. But you guys actually started as Warrior when you were just tykes. Is this the first time you guys strapped on instruments? Like how young were you guys?
Yeah, I met Danny and Mike on a school bus in 1977, and we were discussing Kiss, and
As you do.
yes, always. And I found out they played guitar, and I had not played an instrument yet, but I wanted to play. And my brother was starting to play drums, and so within that week, Danny came over with a guitar and his little amp, and he and Chris started playing together. Danny had already written a song, which just blew my mind, because I didn't even think you could write a song. I thought only Kiss wrote songs. And soon enough, we started playing. We formed a band called Warrior, originally with a guy named Brad McQueen on guitar, and then he quit because he wanted to play softball, and I told him he couldn't do both. You had to be all in,
Be
or
committed.
nothing.
Yeah,
So
Rick
I
was already
fired-
like Bill Graham. He was a hard
Yeah.
ass. already.
I fired him, and we got Mike, and that became the Great Warrior, and then that turned into Shadow. But
And then what was
But
funny
legend
was
has it, Chris, that the day you met Mike McCready was when Kiss took off their makeup on television. Is this true?
No.
Oh,
it's not
because
true.
we met years and years before.
77.
We can jump to that later because there's actually a really funny story that goes with that. But Rick met all these amazing guys on the bus, including this guy Rob Weber, who became the singer for Shadow, all in the same day, and he came home just raving about it. I mean, it was you have to realize now, so many people play instruments and are amazing singers because of all the talent that's out there and all these amazing opportunities that didn't exist. So to meet somebody that played an instrument was pretty great. A lot of kids were playing sports and stuff, but not so much guitar. And he's
not
like
both.
this guy, and he's like, he's going to come over to the house.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Danny comes over, and like Rick said, what was wild was I was planning on playing, Jumpin' Jack Flash and maybe a Kiss song, and Danny had like a completed song and maybe one other song.
You
And
couldn't believe it.
He recorded it. We still have the cassette of it.
Yeah.
You thought you were covering the Stones, and the guy brought originality to the
two songs.
It was called War of the Gods, and it was super heavy, like Black Sabbath.
Wow.
And Chris and I were like, this guy writes songs. We couldn't even conceive of that.
He sold it to Iron Maiden.
He's crazy talented. He always has been, still is. And he's always been very prolific, as Carrie can attest to. He'll bring a lot to the table, and so that was amazing. And then pretty quickly we put the group together. At first, Rick was playing guitar with the strings.
I was playing bass on guitar.
Yeah. So that didn't sound so great.
I was determined. I was going to be in the band. I didn't care.
Now, Carrie, you were not in this band yet. You were growing up in the Tri-Cities area, about a 3-hour drive from Seattle at this time. But you moved there for college, right?
I did.
You did?
I did, yeah, in 85.
85.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out what I was doing at 11. I was not on a bus talking about Kiss. I'll tell you that.
Who are you talking about? Who was young Carrie talking about then? Who are you into?
I was probably more, what? Well, wait, when did Pat Benatar didn't come out till later.
Blondie?
Right? Blondie. Yeah, any of that. Blondie, Pat Benatar. 77 though, I would say I'd still maybe into some disco, like Champagne King, and like roller skating and things like that. So Strawberry Letter 23, all those kind of things. Like I was probably into that.
Did you happen to watch the Bee Gees documentary on Max on HBO?
Yeah,
I don't know if I have.
I've seen it.
It's wild because that time frame is like basically just a 4-year period or something like that. Right, 77
this
is like
post
80 or something like that.
Like Pet Sounds era and beyond. It's
Oh, it's great. It's really great.
It's
funny.
Good.
First vinyl. One of the first vinyl records my mom ever bought me was Andy Gibb. It was Olivia Newton-John and Andy Gibb.
Wow, that combo.
Very.
Was it a split 7? What is with that? That wasn't like a proper album, was it?
No. Andy Gibb had like his own, and I can't remember what Olivia Newton-John record. Never Been Mellow or something. Those are the first but I mean, I thought it was cool that mom was buying records.
That is a good question, though. Have you ever been mellow? I think that's a good question for all of us.
Yeah.
Have we ever?
The one funny thing I do want to add in that was kind of funny with like Rick mentioned, we had Brad, and then little did we know that Danny and Mike had already kind of been playing together on their block, just rocking guitars together all the time, but Danny was a little hesitant to bring Mike.
Yeah, he was.
Because he's always been a real, to this day, a real hyper live wire kid. I think at first he was not so sure how it would all work out. And
you can't have two hyper live wire guys. They'll repel each other.
Pretty much. So he brought him in, and he was just the perfect fit. With
hilarious as always.
Chris, do you remember when Goodness was in LA? And I think you and I and Danny were at Burko's. And Burko put in a videotape of you guys on the ferry.
Yes.
So funny.
And I'm watching the video, and I'm looking at this kid with braces and spandex trying to play video games who's so hyper. And I was like, who's that? Like, who's that spaz? And they're like,
McCready.
Oh, that's Mike. I was like, what's up?
That was actually last week.
And hilarious.
So funny. All over the place. Yeah.
Mike is super funny. That's a thing I love about especially Mike and Chris and my relationship when we were growing up, is that we just laughed constantly at everything and everybody. Everybody was fair game, and just the amount of laughing, like you would hurt after a while because it was so great.
Were there pranks being made back and forth or no?
Sarcasm, making fun of everybody, making fun of each other, just and also like you say one phrase over and over again. And nobody else would think it's funny, but we would get it. It's
you
just,
guys still do that.
We
still do that.
So, the fact that we ended up all playing together much later as the Rockfords was just perfect. It was kind of meant to be that we would all start playing together again because we learned to play together. So we had this incredible almost telepathy where you could understand what your person was going to do. Like when I hear Danny or I hear Mike, like I know what they're going to do musically. Like when I play with Chris, I know what he's going to do. Like we don't have to talk about it. And I think I've played long enough with Carrie that I understand her vocal range and her creativity. Like when I heard your new song, Carrie, perfect, great song. But I just like, oh, that's totally you, and just when you get to know someone well enough and you love them all, you get to know them in a totally different way than somebody else would know, just from the time. Time is the thing that makes a difference, I think, for a friendship.
Well, let's talk about how you all met. because as Carrie said before, she was the watcher, and you two were the pretty boys. But Chris, you did something in your audition for the band Goodness that flipped the script, right? Do you remember what you said or what you did, pardon me, that made Carrie completely change her opinion of you?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think it's actually funnier when Carrie tells the story, but
yeah, you tell him.
I guess I guess I will set it up that, you know, at this point, this would be like 95, I believe, and we'd been through a bunch of the bands and all kinds of things were happening. But, you know, like this story, I'll continue. There's just a friendship that continues between all of us. So the conversation was always there. And Danny reached out one time and said, hey, I have this group I'm playing with, and our drummer's leaving, and that happens to be Carrie's brother, Eric, another great drummer, and he's leaving the group. And would you want to come in and play on the record? And I was like, well, I only want to come in if for sure Eric is leaving. I don't want to step on any toes. And he said, well, just come to practice. But I was at this point, I was very well aware of Carrie and Hammerbox and how great she was and all this stuff. So it wasn't like I was walking in green. I didn't know Fia at this point or anything like that, but or Garth. I don't know if I'd met Garth yet. Mm-hmm. But I come in and I have a certain way that I do things, and
everyone else is smiling.
The Friels can be kind of forward and hugging and just gregarious, and I come into practice and it's right away it's pretty serious. Everybody's kind of looking at their shoes, and I'd kind of learned this thing from Keith Richards that you really lock in. You look at each person and you figure where they're at musically, and also just where their tempo is at, or just kind of like so that everybody's kind of in sync. So I was kind of doing that with everybody, and
so the opposite of shoegaze, then, right?
Yeah. and I think it was starting to connect with everybody except for Carrie. So Carrie, you jump in.
Well, it's just like my past band trauma. So when Danny had asked, because I can go way back. So when my brother was in two bands, and so he was deciding to focus on the other band. And Danny said, hey, I have this friend that I'd really love to bring in. And I was like, okay, who? And he said, Chris Friel. And see, I know the Friels from the University District at a coffee shop. What is it? Espresso Roma.
Yeah.
And they were like pretty boys to me. You know what I mean? Like super handsome, like all the girls, like everybody kind of knew everybody. Well, I say I was pretty shy. Like I knew who people were, but I don't think anybody knew who I was. But I have watched a lot. And so when he said Chris Friel, I was like, oh, hell no.
He's like, no.
Because in my mind, I'm just thinking pretty boy or whatever. And you got to remember too, like I came to Seattle not knowing anyone. And, so I'm very sort of solitary protective of whatever I'm doing. You know what I mean? And so when he said that, I was like, oh, hell no. And I trusted Danny, and Danny was like, no, just trust me. And I was like, okay. And so when we were practicing, Chris was like looking at me, and I couldn't figure out. I was like, what are you looking at? Like I was starting to get pissed, frankly. And in my prior band, we were all young and probably pretty passive aggressive. Like we would not look at each other. I mean, we would need a pole between us, like, I can't look at you. I'm too pissed. So I never looked at anyone. And so when Chris was looking at me, I just didn't know what it was. And I think I finally said to you, what are you looking at? And I'll never forget this, because I am super open to, I'm not egotistical enough to know when someone's teaching me something. And he said, oh, I'm waiting for you to tell me what to do. And I was like, it was like a in my head. I was like, okay,
the pretty boy was referring to you.
He just schooled me big time. And I appreciated it. Like I'm always open to that. But I was like, oh, I think he just taught me something right there. And from then on out, I was like, oh, yeah, Chris Friel's golden. Like, love him. That's never changed.
Which is another lesson in, with any musician or with the musicians you play with. If you go in with an open mind, I always find that I can learn the most things about drumming from guitar players and people that don't play the drums. They give you different ideas versus if you talk to a drummer, they're going to tell you a lot of the same things that you already know. I've learned a lot of cool things from other people, and what to do and what not to do.
I will say this too, Chris. I will say this too, Chris, like you were very respectful, right? Like at the time there was very, probably count on one hand, like how many women were leading bands, right? Mm-hmm. Never once in my life did I ever feel treated differently or anything from Chris Friel. Would not even a thing. So I appreciated that as well.
Do you think, Chris, that the same holds true when it comes to like producers? So like if you had a producer who is doing all the rock albums, you'd be like, okay, I know what he's going to say. But if it's like a producer that's only doing pop, they come in with a pop sensibility. Like, what is this guy talking about? Oh, wait, that's a different idea. Has that ever happened to you in all the different groups that you've been in?
Oh yeah. I mean, we've been lucky to work with a lot of really good people, and you have to realize it takes being the age I am now to say these things. I mean, when you're 20 and something, and the producer's telling you, you're speeding up or you're slowing down or you got to play with a quick track or that kind of thing, you get defensive, but I give myself credit for always staying in it and learning from people, but I'm the drummer, so I'm the first one that gets talked to and gets told how to do things and things like that. So, but it's been a good lesson for me, and that's also gotten me to learn a bit how to produce situations or help produce songs or work within all the bands that I'm in now. I've learned, I feel like I've learned from so many great people, including these people, and including Mike and Danny, and I've learned a lot from Danny.
John Goodmanson.
John Goodmanson, yeah.
For sure.
Now, when we think, I just want to focus in on these roles for a second. Carrie, you told Joel Marshall that answering an ad in the Rocket and joining what would become Hammerbox was this ignorance is bliss moment for you, that you simply just wanted to sing. You didn't put any pressure on yourself to be famous or to attain, XYZ, whatever happens to be, and yet the band had success. So when Hammerbox dissolved after that second record, did you feel like the same about your ability and your desire to sing as you did before Hammerbox? Were there any new expectations when Goodness formed?
You know what I think is amazing about that time is that it never once crossed my mind that I would just go start another band. Not once. Like, I certainly didn't doubt that I couldn't sing. And I was on a real big learning curve as well. Like, Chris and Rick had been playing as early as they had, but like that was my first band ever. So I had just, in my mind, I was just getting started. So it just now that lent myself just like, well, I'm going to form another band. And did. And so just started reaching out to people that I knew that I liked and experimenting with like who might be in that band. And I initially was playing music with Timo Ellis, who's multi-talented, and he knew Danny. And the joke is that he kind of wouldn't give me Danny's phone number. I'm not sure why, but I finally got it out of him. But at the time, I always, maybe that's the good age of like, I don't know enough to be worried or concerned. I have never gone into music to be famous. I'm not built like that. I'm not built to do this so I can get attention, which is probably to my chagrin, right? Like that drive can be really helpful. I like music and I like to sing, and then I like to commune with other musicians, and success is very nice. But that's never been my internal like drive. Sometimes I wish it was, but it's not. I'm not built that way.
Well, it's funny because like all these bands you guys were in back in the day, and now, Chris, you're talking about how this perspective of this experience and the wisdom that we have. And Paul, what's the song? Is it "Thumbing My Way" where Eddie sings, or maybe it's "Love Boat Captain"? The young have, or the old have wisdom that they can't give away to the young, kind of thing, And it's like, you think about going backwards, like I wish I could have had like the confidence in my ability now that I had then, or my drive. Like, do you ever think about like, God damn it, I wish I could have had this then? Or is it like, nah, that's how it's supposed to happen?
I don't think any of us doubted our ability. I think the thing you end up having to navigate is protecting your whatever you're authentically making. Like that's the thing you discover that's rough. Like you actually don't want to tell people what's behind the curtain in the music industry. It's rough. So no one here doubted their abilities. Whether or not the people who end up being in charge are going to get it or take good care of you gets to be more harrowing than your own sense of what you know how to do, or how, or the love of what you're making, or how good it is. We all love any song we've created. It's authentic, it's personal. Whether or not that industry supports us is so out of our hands. That's the thing that's rougher. I don't think any of us have trouble with ourselves. You know what I mean? Like,
well, so I mean, you guys were all in a lot of bands over the years, and I'm sure that many out there have read various accounts of the aforementioned music scene in the 80s and the 90s in Seattle. Everyone was playing in like everyone else's demos and everyone's EPs. I mean, I think Mark Arm was in like 3 or 4 bands at once at all times. He was in everybody's band. And then even when Pearl Jam blew up, Mike still found time to do the Mad Season record and Mirrorball with Neil Young. And obviously, it's harder to get together when he's got such a different level of pressure and commitment. So how did you guys manage to carve out the time to make this happen? And who among you initiated the idea to do it?
Well, I'll say one thing. The thing you need to know about Mike is that he's an Aries, so he runs hot and cold. So it's not a time issue or commitment. It's like, does he want to do it? And if he wants to do it, he will find all of us and we will do it. That's the thing with Mike, is that he's super passionate, and that comes across obviously in his guitar playing and the way he plays, the way he lives, how he conducts himself. So I just want to say that because I get asked about Mike all the time. I'm sure we all do. And he runs hot or cold. So if he wants to do the Rockfords or a project, he's going to do it. And as I remember it, and Chris will probably correct me, but he and Mike and Danny were writing songs together. It was kind of a Mike solo thing through Epic. And I think it started in late 97. And then they were writing songs. They asked Chris to come in. And then Chris called me and said, I need you to come in and kind of organize it because it's a little chaotic. And I found my old date books, and I have a record of us practicing January 1998, and we started working on some songs. And that was the beginning. And we had a lot of ideas, and Mike had a deal with Epic. And I remember when we were first recording at John and Stu's place, I met one of the guys from Epic, and he said, what we're going to do is we're going to do an album, and we're going to have different singers in every song. Right. That was the plan that Epic wanted to do. And I remember Mike saying, well, who do you want to sing on the album and all these things? And I know that he was interested in having Carrie sing on a song. And originally we had a lot of music written, but getting back to what you're saying is that we kind of worked on Mike's schedule. So we would get together throughout 1999 when he had free time, and we would record songs and song ideas and piece those together. But the idea originally was someone who's going to sing on every song. But I think whenever you came in, Carrie, I know that he was like, well, typical what I'm saying is Mike hot and cold. He was like, that's it. Carrie's doing the whole record. And the whole plan was out the window of a bunch of singers, because that's how he is. Like when he's into something, he's 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'll jump in, and the way I saw it was Danny sort of initiated, and I think this jumps onto something we were just talking about earlier about being in a lot of bands and being involved in the music industry. At the point where this sort of began, being in Goodness and everything, we were getting a little bit fried with the record company situation we were in. So I think that Danny he needed a little bit of happiness. So he reached out to his great friend Mike, and they started writing, and then they called me and immediately just said, we're thinking about doing this thing. And I said, well, Rick's got to be involved, because it's sort of like there was sort of this early idea of having the Shadow people kind of coming together and having different singers, I guess a little bit like what Santana ended up doing with his record, where there was a bunch of singers, which is, I always think is like a good idea on paper, but not the greatest if you try to play shows. And so we were throwing around all kinds of crazy singer ideas. It was like, it's like having the keys to the kingdom of, I think Ronnie James Dio got mentioned, and the guy for Angel City, and I think Robin Zander, and because what's funny about it is that at that time it was almost a little bit possible, to do this because of Mike's situation. But I think that we went out to do some touring with Goodness, and in that time, Carrie had maybe written a little bit with Mike, and I just think having those couple songs with Carrie, Mike was just like, Carrie's got it. This is the vibe of the record. This is the whole thing. The situation with the singers is totally over. Carrie's the singer, and we were excited because, I'd been playing with Carrie for quite a while now, and I knew it was going to work. And I knew that it's a very few people could jump into the situation with us, the four of us.
Yeah.
It's a very unique chemistry that we have, and a very odd language that we all speak to each other. And I knew that Carrie could do it. She could handle it. She could have the sense of humor about it. And I think also I just knew that she could bring something different to it versus having a bunch of male hard rock singers take it. I don't think it would have been what it would have been that way.
Well, let's talk about that language, though. Carrie, you've spoken about how when you're in your 20s, it's really difficult to communicate, and that bands they can splinter when success adds that extra element of pressure, and those divisions really get highlighted. And if you're not really mature enough yet to communicate and solve those problems, things just go south. Now, you all had been in music. In a number of bands, as we've talked about, by the time you all got together. Do you think that this collaboration could have happened earlier, or when it happened, that was the only time it could have happened?
I don't know. I think, like Chris is saying, there was a need due to things that were going on, like an emotional need to come together, and that's kind of right timing that you can't predict. I think if you'd asked like 3 years earlier, like Chris and I would have been on tour, Rick with us, and Mike would have been in the thick of his own touring and recording and things like that. So we all would have been probably way too busy. I think there's something really particular about that Danny reaching out to Mike as a personal emotional need moment.
Friendship, for sure.
It's like a friendship safety net, right? You can come back to your cocoon kind of thing, like, oh, this is comfortable. I can be safe in this moment kind of thing.
Well, and at the root of the whole thing is, I feel like the guys coming together based on and really ready to do it for fun, for love, knowing each other, their relationship. That's a real root thing at the start of the Rockfords that I could feel, right? And so when I entered, like I had been in, a band with Chris and Danny. Rick had been with us the whole time as well. So I already felt like they were my brothers. Like I already knew them. And Mike is such a, I will say this about Mike. Mike is such a 100% deep lover of like female voices and female leads. Like I could really feel that, like he has reverence almost for it. And so that was, exciting. I mean, exciting for me. It just feels good for someone you can feel appreciation, like artistic appreciation. That's kind of particular. And so, and for me with that combo, I was like, this just seems like, lovely, like we're going to have a really good time.
Yes.
Whatever we do here,
there was also another cool thing that was happening at this time too, that, within the Pearl Jam situation, it's pretty rare. I mean, you guys would know better than me. I don't know if Mike gets a chance to write many lyrics in Pearl Jam, but he was starting at this point, he was starting to write a lot of poetry and lyrics.
I was just going to bring this up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he found kind of a kinship with Carrie, like where he could bring these to the table and they could really go through them. And they worked really well together on that. And I know Rick was involved with that too. And it's like, it was like no bad ideas.
Yeah.
You can do this. And I don't think in the situation that he was in at that point, with Pearl Jam, I don't think that was a very viable option for him to do that, or even needed. And so I think he was pretty darn excited. I think the timing was right for him to do that. I mean, I know, post him getting sober, he got really into writing poetry, and that was a big healing thing for him. So
it was also such a big deal to have him trust me with those words. Like, you're going to deliver these the way I feel them, or in my own style. But like, I think that's a safe place. Like, I'll put my words and I know you're going to do them in a way that I love. And I need to hear that,
I wonder, Carrie, if this project was a safe place, as I mentioned, to do that, to experiment, looking at the credits on here, and who knows if they're actually 100% accurate, but Mike, all of you guys are spread across these lyrics as far as the credits go. And so to have the trust in you to sing them from the right place, as he's hoping that you would, and you did, I wonder if maybe that was a testing ground for him in a sense, to maybe have the confidence to bring something because he didn't have a lyrical credit for Pearl Jam until Inside Job in 2006. And that's a wonderful, wonderful song. And it's, if you didn't know Mike has ever been writing any kind of poetry or lyrics at all, you go, holy shit, 1 for 1, bro. But he was able to test himself and maybe find some security by having you guys as friends and to workshop it here, and it works.
Yeah. Also, I hope he knows too, like I wouldn't sing anything I didn't think was good.
Right.
Like I just wouldn't. I mean, it wouldn't come off okay. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't sound, I wouldn't be able
authentic,
to do it well if it wasn't good. You know what I mean? Like if it was hokey lyrics, I would be like, this is just going to sound terrible no matter how well I sing it. You know what I mean? Like
enough about Kiss though.
Great. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, they were great words. I really like them. And I kind of felt a little honored to be on that experiment with them, you know, like getting to express that poetry as well. Because they're not how I write.
Right. I mean, let's talk about it though. Like, how quickly did these songs come together? Like, was it a lot of jamming out in a rehearsal space? Did you guys and Mike and Danny did you all bring in demos? Like, how did this come out? I
feel like it was a kismet.
Yeah, it really was. We did a lot of writing in the studio, and we did some at the practice spaces. There's a lot of collaboration between all of us. Like Chris was saying, there was no bad ideas. So we would just get together and maybe Danny would start a song or Mike would start a song or Chris would start with the drums. And then we'd all kind of come in. I mean, most of the songs, except for maybe Adelaide, were definitely total collaborations. And Adelaide was pretty much completed by Danny. There were some things that we arranged with it. And Danny also wrote the lyrics for the most part to that song, which is a great song. But it was just, you know, there was an environment created, I think, also by John Goodmanson, where it was very cozy. And I think we all felt that you could throw any idea out there and it wouldn't be rejected. It would just be tried out and see where it goes. And I think Carrie brought a certain feeling to it of like, let's just keep trying everything. And also just the way she sings is so wonderful and adds so much to it. You know, it was the perfect fit. So I think a lot of the ideas were written at John and Stu's, and, you know, we'd see where they go. And then John also could edit those and maybe make it a little more of a complete song.
And go ahead, Chris.
One thing I will say is like, what was super, super exciting at that point was all of the songs were like brand new, except for I think Something True was taken off of a Goodness song that we had demoed with Stan Lynch from Tom Petty. So
right.
They didn't make it to our record. The song, the music was from that, but like, and I think maybe, and I didn't find this out until kind of recently. I think either Distress or River Wide. I think Mike had been was writing that for Pearl Jam. I think.
Yeah.
But everything was brand new, so that there's sort of that feeling when these songs are so new and so exciting that you're just so caught up in it. And I think that transfers to the recording, you know. And then I also want to echo again, like having Carrie involved, it took it out of this, because I think when we very first started doing it, it was a leaning kind of heavy metal and kind of.
It was for sure.
I was going to ask about that, Chris.
We were having sort of a laugh about it because we all love heavy metal, and it was like,
it's our roots.
We were sort of like, well, what if we did this thing where you and Danny could just fucking rip solos,
shred,
like the old days, like, because you know, what if, because it was pretty out of style, you know, to do this.
Especially then,
we were like, what if we did this thing, and we would be just cracking up about it, like, you know, like, we're gonna do this.
So then, hold on,
you know, and then you bring Carrie in, and she just took it so left field in such a beautiful way from that.
Yeah.
And that's was that conscious though, Chris? Because you know, Carrie, you've got that you sing in a choir, right? So it's somewhat classically trained, you know. And then you guys, the metal guys, how Danny too, Mike too, obviously. Where did the worlds ever collide in a very obvious way, or was it a natural kind of morphing of those worlds to find the sound?
I feel like it was a natural morphine. I mean, there's plenty of guitar ripping on that record. You know what I mean?
But it's not metal though. It's still kind of just a groovy.
No, I mean, I think you're right. Like bringing me into it, like it just changes the game and the style, right? Like I'm not, I'm not a metal singer, right? Like, and so,
Yet.
but I think not yet. I could do it, I guess. You could try. But I think it ended up just switching back to their other love of songwriting, right? Because everybody in the band has a core like love for good songwriting. So even if it wasn't going to be metal, at the root, all these guys love writing just good songs, and so and with all kinds of genres. I mean, they have a background in metal, but they also have a background in a whole other like paths they've gone down.
Yes.
In terms of
And
styles.
I have to give Rick a lot of credit too, because I think when we started getting closer to the finish line and actually recording these songs, in particular like Spiral and This Life, that have these, it really is like Judas Priest, where there's one guy does a solo, somebody does a solo, they go back and forth. I love Judas Priest, so it's like we actually did it. And then when we were getting into it, I have to be honest, I was starting to chicken out. I was like, oh man,
I remember.
and I was like, maybe we should. I started getting to my, very, ways of like, my pop brain was like, we got to cut these down. And I have to give Rick a lot of credit for, he's the one that was like, no, we're leaving this stuff in. And it's like, I'm so glad that we did, because
that,
that's
great,
the stuff that makes the record unique,
It's a great saying, first thought, best thought, I think it was Allen Ginsberg. And it's really true. Like, I think you have to go with your first instinct, and that's what the four of us were doing. And I know that this is the difference between the Friel brothers, but you can't overthink it. You've got to really trust yourself that this is what we're writing and this is where we're at. And yes, trade off the guitar solos, go crazy on the drums, do my crazy bass things, all that stuff. Just trust yourself that it's going to be a great song. And they're all great songs. But Chris is right. There was that moment where we were in the car and he was going, I don't know.
Well, also it was kind of exciting to have Mike
rip.
Just give him a chance to sort of rip. And same with Danny, I think, people love that. I mean, I would say that's one of the main reasons people go to Pearl Jam shows. It's just to hear Mike just fucking
Absolutely.
rip. It's such a, I literally, when I go to shows, I literally tear up sometimes when he's doing this thing, because I know him so well. And just to have, it was very important for us to kind of put that on the record.
He's channeling. Like Mike's playing is like channeling. Like, whoa,
when he's like this.
Yes, I'm like, he's connected. He was
doing a lot of that.
He does this thing.
Yeah. Well, I think
Rick,
I want to.
Go ahead,
these
Carrie,
guys
please.
too. These guys also, and I give them credit, because they could have defaulted back into and had a great time into their past style. But you could feel a real commitment to opening up, learning, trying new things.
I agree.
Yeah. And a commitment to functioning differently amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And that's very loving. And that's I have a lot of respect for that, because that doesn't always happen. It was, you guys were very conscious about it, about not falling into old habits and growing together in order to grow your friendships even. Like, this project was deep. On a lot of levels.
On some records, the bass and drums can feel like a bit removed from the guitars from a melody standpoint, but the interplay feels very intentional on this record. Rick, you sound very bouncy. It's a very lively tone. It works well with the guitars as much as it does with the drums. What was your goal on this record from a bass perspective?
I think the goal was not to think and just to be. And that's my favorite thing when I'm playing music, when I'm lost in the music and I'm not thinking about anything else. It's almost like a meditation state. I've had that a lot in my life. I did that when I was recording with Danny on his albums too. And you reach a state where everything you've learned up to that point is going through you. So what you're hearing on the record is no thought. I mean, I can hear back and go, oh, I didn't do it the same way twice. And, a lot of it is just being in the moment, playing for the love of the music, locking in with Chris, looking at Mike and Danny, and just feeling free. And that's all I ever wanted with music, was to feel free. So when you're in a band project like this, you can play however you want. When you're playing with somebody else, you have to serve their song. But in this situation, I think all four of us were just playing so free because we knew we could.
No one felt a governor in any way. It was just like, let's just do it.
No.
And
a good chunk of those.
Wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
But a very important part of this is John Goodmanson, which he doesn't get mentioned enough because he created that environment for all of us to play together. I think Danny or Chris brought him into the project. I'm so smart because he's so much fun to be with. And you see him and he's laughing his head off at us. He's having so much fun with us. John is the sixth member.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. He creates that environment to just go for it and have fun. And you see him like laughing his head off, having so much fun. He's on the ride with us. And I think one time he said to me, like, you guys are playing at the height of your ability or your fullest of your ability. And I think that's really true. So you got to mention him too. I didn't interrupt you, Chris, but it's just important to mention that John is the key part of this album.
Can you imagine the producer that had to get with the 5?
No, I can't.
Well, and he was a perfect person.
Like, when you're talking about these two spark plugs of Danny and Mike on the one, and then the three. So I was actually going to ask about John, and obviously he clearly had gave you guys license to just be yourselves. Did he also challenge you in ways you had been challenged before to get a certain product?
Oh, for sure. Okay. Yeah, you can't slack off, and you really. He's going to make you rise even higher than you thought you were. Go ahead, Carrie.
But John has good taste. Like John can like step back, I think, from anybody he's working with, and he just has really good taste without limiting you. Right? That's very intuitive. And so he never got in the way, but he might have and I think we trusted him a lot to say, what about that? What about this? Again, a sixth member, like it was a communal conversation. He was never dictating anything, but we trusted his taste.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing I was going to add, that the one thing to remember about this too is that the takes that you hear, that's the four of us playing together. A good chunk of those things are for the most part. Some of them are cut together, and some are, maybe like take 3 and take 4 sometimes put together. But this is not; these aren't like everybody's playing separately. A good chunk of them are 4, and that song Riverwide that has Nancy Wilson. That's her singing with the band.
Wow,
live with the band.
There are some records where it is very obvious that the band is playing together, and 2 of them that come off the top of my head would be Mirror Ball, Neil Young and Pearl Jam, and Appetite for Destruction.
Oh yeah,
outside of some of the leads, right? There's a cohesion to that, and some of it sometimes it's forcing you because the record company's like, you got 15 days to get this sorted, and sometimes it's just like it is what it is. Was there any kind of pressure to fit it into a time frame, or it's just like, we want to do it this way?
Well, I think we're also lucky in the sense that this is still when the record business existed. So we actually had like a budget. Like, we had money to make a record. I mean, it's not like we exceeded what we needed to spend. We did it very quickly, but the opportunity was there. We had a record company. And this is where I never take these moments for granted. And I think that we were very lucky that we were still existing in this weird realm of, Epic Records. Giving money to a band to make a record and take as long as you want or whatever. But we made that record very quickly and didn't spend very much on it. But I think if we needed to, the money was there to make it. And so I think I feel very lucky that we got to do that.
When you look back on this record, like sonically speaking, and I guess from a songwriting perspective as well, I mean, were any of you channeling certain sounds or styles at the time that really pop out to you 25 years later?
Well, I'll just speak for myself that since I started playing bass, I always had a thought in my mind that I didn't want to play like anybody else. And I thought that even before I really learned how to play the bass. So even though I have people that I really like I love Dennis Dunaway on the early Alice Cooper records, I love Tom Peterson, I love Bill Wyman, but it was very important to me early on to establish my own identity. And I would say that would be the same for Chris and Danny and Mike. I think we all took some lessons, but at some point you break off and just do your thing. So I never felt like I was trying to play like anybody else on the Rockfords album, for sure.
This album was recorded at Studio Litho, famously owned.
Well,
right?
It started at John and Stu's place,
right? Okay.
And then we cut. I know for sure we cut Island, the bass and drums at Litho.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Windows was done at Litho.
Windows, that's a whole other discussion, but with Island. And then we went to Studio X, and I know that we overdubbed some things, and everything was mostly mixed at Studio X, but some of it John mixed by himself at John and Stu's place. John and Stu's place was originally Reciprocal, which is, famous for Nirvana, Bleach, and a lot of the early Sub Pop stuff. It's a great room. It's still around. I think Death Cab for Cutie owns it now.
I don't know.
But it's a great building. Everything happened in 1999 of recording, overdub, mixing, and then we mastered it. So everything was done in 1999.
Why jump around? Any particular reason?
Just whatever John wanted to do, I think, right?
Yeah, I think that we had started at his studio, and then I think those songs were sort of done, and then I think Epic heard them and gave it the green light. So then we had a little bit. I think he decided that Litho would be better to kind of track better and sort of finish it, and also a better place for the vocals. They have really incredible microphones.
Yes, they do.
For lead vocals and stuff. So.
Ribbon microphones. And
I think if John got the chance to play in rooms that would suit the drums or vocals, or if they had things, that's the move. It's like, it'd be great to record, drums or whatever at Litho. And then if we can go to, Studio X and all of that for other reasons.
And John is the whole package, because he can record you, he can place the microphones, he can engineer, he can mix, and he can produce. So he really is the whole package of creating a safe, warm environment where you do trust him. And I had got to know John through Goodness, and so we already had a very friendly relationship. So he was a natural to work.
Was he more of a musician's, songwriter's producer, as opposed to the Rick Rubin style, which is like, it's not vibing correctly for me, man, go ahead and change it. Like, you don't know how to play the guitar. What are you talking about, bro?
I don't think John would ever tell a band, you ain't vibing well for me. Like,
no.
Do you know what I mean, though? Like, there's two different kinds of producers.
He's a musician's friend, for sure. He is a songwriter's friend. He's a drummer's friend. He's definitely a bass player's friend, and he's definitely a singer's friend.
I mean, he doesn't, I will say he doesn't put on the guitar and get in the room with you. Like, I believe that's how Andrew Watt works. I think he'll get in there with you, and he'll be playing guitar right alongside. And I think they are
around. And,
he has great ideas, and if he's got a pretty strong opinion, he's good at saying it.
Carrie, you have said that there's a lot of freedom in anonymity. You can do whatever you want, right? Mm-hmm. Chris and Rick, do you agree, number one? And do you feel it was easier or harder to create what you wanted to create before all those big Seattle bands kind of blew up?
I've never given that any thought.
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's I've never thought about that, because
podcast is over. Okay.
No, I don't. When you're doing music, I don't think about anybody else or anything else. I mean, I was really excited about the Seattle scene blowing up, for sure. I mean, that's all I ever wanted. That's why we moved to LA, because the scene was dead here. Chris has that running joke of like, we were going this way and all the opportunities were going that way, but we didn't know it at the time. We didn't know, because there was nothing happening in 87 at the moment. But no, I mean, I don't think that has anything to do with your creativity.
Yeah, I agree.
I just think the only thing that changes is like your expectations are different. And I think that's again, what we were probably caught up a little bit in the Goodness machine, was that we had been through the ringer a little bit, and it hadn't changed our love for the songs and our love for each other. But I think we were a little burned out. And I think that's why this came at the right time. And I think it also came at the right time for Mike. You guys would know the discography better than me, but I think this lands somewhere between Binaural and Riot Act. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that there was
between Yield and Binaural.
Okay. So there was a nice gap of like, where
that whole year, 99,
so there was freedom for them to do things. I don't think he felt too stressed. I mean, those guys are always working on things, but I think that the opportunity created itself, and I think he was also sort of excited to be with his friends and do something just a little bit different than he'd been doing. It was, like I said, everything landed at the right time. So I think that, to your question, I think that the only thing that changed for everybody after all that stuff was your expectations. I think the creativity sort of stayed the same, but I know that we were you get caught up in these things because you see everybody else sort of getting gold records and platinum records.
Yeah.
I mean, it was such a phenomenal time to think about that. You know, your friends are receiving multi-platinum albums and doing all these things, so that it feels like the path is there for you to do it too, you know?
Well, I mean, on one hand, at least for him, it's not Pearl Jam, right? So that there's no ceiling or guardrails there. But for you guys, I mean, more folks are going to be aware.
But I don't think there's ceiling or guardrails in Pearl Jam either, from talking to Mike about it. I mean, I think that's a very creative situation too. I think that this is more unique because of all the years we'd had together prior to that, of learning how to play music. You got to remember, like, we didn't really know how to play music, except for maybe Danny, who was...
Except for Danny, who had songs.
Danny was kind of a savant in the sense that he was far beyond all of us. You know, Mike and I didn't know how to play at all. And Chris took to the drums pretty quickly. But you got to remember, we all learned, even Danny, we learned how to play together. So it was a completely different situation compared to Pearl Jam, you know. And, you know, and then, like I said, bringing Carrie in was just absolutely perfect.
I think, though, to your question, I agree with Rick. Like, I think artistry has nothing to do with popularity and fame.
Right.
There's just, you can have that your whole life without having any of the success, that kind of success. But I do think it just made me think about Mike too. There are things that come with the popularity and fame, which I think can get limiting in that, especially in you're in a band, Pearl Jam, right? Like, huge. That comes with a lot of like responsibility, a lot of schedule, you know, it's like a machine. So in order, like, for him to, I think that our project was also an opportunity for him to carve out a space for his own artistic growth, right? Like,
for sure. Yeah.
Pearl Jam's a monster. It's, you know, how much of Mike can, I think all those guys are amazing to each other, but
They are.
for lack of better words, it's a big machine with a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, and they all have their own side things going on, probably for that reason.
Yeah. So it's a big deal. I think it's a good thing and a big deal for Mike to carve out this space safely with friends to go where it is safe, right? Where with people who will say, do whatever you want. Find out who you are.
You can see then why he would absolutely relish in doing this project. And I guess the flip side of it was because his name is attached to this. And even though you guys have known him forever, there's going to be more eyeballs on this because his name's attached to it. Does that influence you guys in any way?
Not me. No. I can't speak for anybody else. No,
I mean, it certainly helped. It certainly helped with, like I said, opening doors for everything we wanted to do. And I know that was part of the marketing campaign for sure, but it didn't influence the way we wanted to do it.
To create.
No.
That's great.
No.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's the thing that's great is that, like, getting back to Mike writing lyrics, like, you know, writing those lyrics, hearing that come out of him. And, you know, with a song like Windows, like, I knew that was somewhat taken from the Hotel New Hampshire. You know, if there's a line in there about keep passing the open windows, don't jump out the window, and walking by the open windows, you know, and a lot of his lyrics are just so creative and something that nobody else would think of but him. And I think it was great for him to express himself in that way, you know, and same with Danny writing Adelaide, such a beautiful song and evocative. And when you hear the song, it's almost like you're going on a journey. And I think the creative side of the four of us writing the music and then bringing in Carrie and making the five can't be overstated. It was such a creative experience for all of us.
Yeah, agreed. I also think the Seattle scene, the people like Chris and Rick and Danny and Mike, it's very, because they go way back, it's very grounded. I mean, it kind of is irrelevant whatever's happened to anybody. You know what I mean? Even Mike at Pearl Jam, they remain very grounded people. Very, you just kind of can't take that away. And I should say respectfully, you guys nurture that too. And you take good care of that.
We never stop being friends.
I give that band a lot of credit that they carve out these times for all of each guy to be have a lot of freedom doing solo things, so that when they come back together, it's a fresh thing every time. I mean, they run that band so well. It's just such a perfect example of how to run a successful rock band, in my opinion.
Well, let's finish with a question about this band. 25 years later, what does this record mean to each of you?
God, this record is still really fresh the minute I put it on. Like, it never diminishes to me the stories and the lyrics and the music, like it never dims down. Anytime I put it on again, I'm like, that is just badass. Like, that's what, I'm satisfied with all of it, every single instrument, everything that happens on it. And that's such a good thing to have for yourself as an artist, to be like, job well done. That's a piece of art that it's never going to change, in terms of like, that's a good piece of art right there.
I think it's a dream come true. Every time I think about it, it makes me smile. It's like a conversation with five friends. I mean, I hear all of us talking to each other in the grooves. I hear all of us laughing and speaking to each other. And I remember Carrie cutting her vocals, and I remember Danny writing lyrics, and I remember us, one time we got kind of serious at Studio X. Mike was like, "It's only rock and roll," and we all started laughing. Or Mike brought in like wigs and sunglasses for her to wear to be funny. And I think some of those pictures are out there. And so when I hear it, I just hear us all having this conversation. It really is a perfect record to be. And Carrie's right. There's some records like that you might not like them at the time and you want to redo them. But this one is perfect. It's just a dream come true.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely one of my favorite things I've done. It's just, I think also when we do get to play shows, just to see everybody singing all the lyrics, and you can kind of see how important these songs have become over time for these people. And I think we're kind of lucky in the sense that Rockfords kind of has this cycle, like we can do it every few years and keep creating and do things like that. So I know that we'll do something again, and it's just success to me in that way, that it's had this impact on people over time. So it's for me, it's just the collaboration. It's just friendship.
Listening back to it the other day, sonically speaking, it just sounds as fresh as it did then. There's some records that the way that they were produced, they sound grounded in a time or a genre's time. Like you listen to a Korn record, for example, it's like, that's the 90s. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is fine, because that's what that is. But there's some just rock records you go, or any kind of genre, and you're like, wow, this could have been recorded yesterday. It sounds so clear and crisp. And I think the first Brad record sounds kind of like that, and even the Mad Season record sounds kind of like that. So I got to applaud John for making you guys sound timeless, because it was really, really cool. I will also ask you, there was an EP in 2004 called Waiting, right?
Yep.
Since then, you guys have played it live a couple times. You mentioned that, Rick, or Chris, but has there ever been thoughts to do another LP?
There was actually. Yeah. We were going to do a 45 for Hockey Doctor, and we were throwing around ideas, but I think maybe Mike just lost enthusiasm for it, so we didn't do it. But even the last time we practiced, it's classic, Danny and all of us, we started writing a song at the band practice before the last show at the Showbox. So hope springs eternal that we can do something. But I guess if we don't do anything again, I'm happy too. I'm happy with the Rockfords as it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I could see us doing something. There's a song that was started that Mike and I were working on, and it was actually kind of funny when Dark Matter came out. I kept waiting to hear that song on the record, because you never know where these things end up.
I know, right?
And there is a thing that we started, and then Danny sent around some good ideas, and Rick had a really awesome super Rick rockin' thing that he sent around, and that was like totally out of left field, which was exactly very Rockfords. So there's some ideas that are floating around, but I think, to be honest, if we did do something, I'd rather just go like, meet in a room, let's start fresh again, because I think that's the vibe of the Rockfords.
Because that's how this one was made.
Yeah,
I still want to release Do It. Okay, we didn't release the song Do It. I love that.
We did. Yeah, we wrote a brand new song, Do It, at the time, and that's on the live record.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good song.
There's too much creativity, I mean, we do have to put a little limit on Danny. Like Mike and I had one song, Rick had one song, Danny sent 16 songs.
Calm down, Danny. Jesus Christ.
And they already had Carrie already had vocals on, and I'm like, wait, hold on.
I got over to his house. I'm like, all right, chop. Well, Danny and I were for most of it, the main writers for Goodness. So like, if you get us in a room, we're like, chop. Okay, 10 songs. There you go.
I like these laborious guys over here.
I'd like to share an anecdote, though. Like when we were recording the Rockfords album, at one point Cheap Trick was in town because they were doing a really cool thing where they would play the first 3 albums their entirety in different cities, and they had 3 nights at the Crocodile,
Pearl Jam opened one of them, right? Didn't Pearl Jam open?
Yeah. And Mike's like, Rick Nielsen's going to come down and hang out with us. And we're like, great. And he came down and brought one of his sons. And we just spent the day with him. He would tell us stories, and then we ended up like jamming together, and we ended up writing a song idea together. And it was just an incredible thing because we all, besides Kiss, we all always loved Cheap Trick. And it was so great just to hang out with him as musicians and spend the day together and write and jam and laugh and talk. And it was just really, and same with having Nancy Wilson there. But of course, Cheap Trick's being so important to, especially the four of us. I don't know about you, Carrie, but the four of us really loved them. And it was such a great day to spend the day with Rick.
I would love to sing with Robin Sander. Hello. Why did nobody like that? Why didn't we do
put
that?
Out there. And I will say it's kind of funny because the band's called the Rockfords because Mike was really into watching the Rockford Files all the time. But every time you see the guys in Cheap Trick, they're like, the Rockfords, how's the Rockfords? Rick will say, hey, Rick Rockford, how's the Rockfords? Because I think they think we named it after Rockford,
like the Ramones. It's like, that's not what we are.
Yeah, he always calls you Rick Rockford. How's the Rockford?
Chris Rockford, Carrie Rockford, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've all got the last name. Yeah.
It was hilarious because he showed up, I think it was summer, and he showed up in full gear. Like he had this blazer, two sweaters. I mean, it was just hilarious. He looked like he could have walked on stage, and I think the idea was he was going to come and we were going to write some songs together, but he more just told us funny stories. And we did write one thing together, but it ended up kind of in a hybrid way on one of their records.
Yeah,
actually.
There's a song called Best Friend by Cheap Trick, and a little bit of that came out of our jam because I gave Rick the CD of our jam, and Chris is like, that sounds like one of our songs. So it's like, you can have it.
Yeah,
I think
it's Cheap Trick.
To Rick's point, like, the potential of more Rockfords music, like it is about the, like, would we like the opportunity to get together and be creative like that again? And I would definitely love that. And because that experience is just fun, like just to feed like the creative bug. And when you get people together that work well together, that can be rare. And sometimes you just want that process. Like, I want to get in, let's just see what we make. Let's, get in a room together and see what 5 things we come up with. That's a lovely process. I would love to do that again.
Well,
I do want to bring up Kiss because we
oh God.
The one time.
This is when we're going to talk about the choice of color on the wall behind you.
Yes.
You promised just once.
It's a funny story because we finally decided we're going to do our first Rockford show in 2000, and I think Mike's like, it's booked on Saturday at the Crocodile, and Chris and I are like, well, that's the night Kiss are playing.
Oh, that's right.
Can't go.
Can't do that.
Can't do it.
Can't do it. And so we moved it to the Thursday so Chris and I could go see Kiss play, which was very nice. So
I'll tell you what. Here, I'm going to toast to y'all 25 years of the Rockfords. And if you next time you play, hopefully you're not up against the Kiss hologram concert so that you can't do it. Rick and Chris Friel and Carrie Akre from the Rockfords.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here's to you guys. Thank you.
Big thanks to Chris and Rick Friel and Carrie Akre for coming on the show to talk about the Rockfords LP and all of their musical history, really.
Yeah, absolutely. What a pleasure having them on. I mean, just the conversation alone, the chemistry was palpable. So I can only imagine what the recording sessions were like. I mean, fantastic. Yeah, just a treat having them on.
Absolutely feel that these guys have been together and been friends and obviously family for decades, and it comes across and pardon me, it comes across and. Not only on the record, but here in the conversation, you can tell why the record sounds as tight as it does, pardon me. And I think that anybody who was curious about this offshoot, this side project, whatever you want to call it, go listen to it. It is so much fun, straight ahead rock, and a lot of dynamics. And like I said in the interview there, it just sounds sonically rich and current and timeless. So thank you, Chris, Rick, and Carrie for coming on. And Danny and Mike, I guess next time, right? We'll catch you for the 30th.
Almost as nice as another Rockfords album. So
let's put it into the universe. Put it into the universe. New Rockfords. Hama, 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 hama. Anyways, before I totally run off the rails here, as I always do at the end of these shows, do us a favor and donate your money to this month's fundraiser, which benefits DonorsChoose.org, a great organization that helps classrooms around the country. Scan that QR code with your phone right now, or go directly to our Instagram bio, tap on the link, donate a few bucks, $5 or more, as we always say each month. Stickers, a pin. I think usually at this point, you've thrown them all, so they don't have any more. There's to wear them as goggles, but I think you've thrown them all.
There's always more.
There's always more. There's always money in the banana stand.
Oh, man.
Anybody? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway. There's another surprise one. So thank you to everyone out there for donating. And like I said, the greatest donator gets the giveaway record on vinyl. If you like Live Pearl Jam from 1998 in Australia, you're going to have a great time donating, I would say. And if you want to support this show, Patreon's a great place to start. We have a monthly giveaway. This month, it's going to be the Rockfords Record Store Day release limited edition 2 LP vinyl and the EP on CD on compact disc. What is that?
They must have.
Do you have compact discs still?
I still do, yeah.
Yeah. Do they all smell of cologne or just a couple of them?
Oh, we're not going there now. Come on.
That's an old joke, gang. You got to go back a few episodes to understand that one.
You do.
Last but not least, if you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications. If you're audio only, Paul, what do they do?
They should rate, review, and subscribe on their preferred podcast platform of choice. Feed that algorithm because James from the Cold Gun told you so.
Ooh, that's true.
Yeah,
that is James Joseph from James from the Cold Gun. And one more time, visit the old online shop for great merch and to support the show. I toast to you. Well, we'll see you next week, gang. And until we do, you've been listening to or watching
The State of Love and Trust.